Chapter 1: The Quiet Flame in the Royal Kitchen. The kitchens of Velrosia's royal palace never slept. They breathed heat and steam, whispered in clinks of silver on porcelain, and pulsed with the unrelenting rhythm of blades slicing through vegetables and veal and expectations. And in the center of it all, steady, silent, and unnoticed, stood Elira Varn. "Careful with the sauce, Tom. The rose reduction will separate if it simmers even 30 seconds too long," she said without raising her voice. Tom, the junior saucier, startled like a soldier under fire. He immediately turned the flame down. "Yes, Chef Elira?" She didn't scold, didn't smile either. She simply moved on, checking the roast temperatures with the flick of a brass thermometer and a sharper gaze. Her presence was commanding without ever needing to be loud. That was how she survived here, in shadows, not storms. "Chef Elira," called a runner, breathless as he barreled into the scullery. "The Grand Chamberlain just sent word, menu changes. The prince wants honeyed figs added to the dessert platter, for all 200 guests." Elira paused, just barely. A royal request, at this hour, from him. "Tell the pantry staff to check for dried Adriat figs, soak them in mulled wine, and rehydrate them fast. We'll need to adjust the sugar balance," she said. Then, more quietly, "and send someone to fetch Jory. He's the only one who knows how to plate those properly." The runner nodded and disappeared into the noise. Elira exhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the marble counter, the chill of it grounding her. It had been 47 days since she last spoke to Kael outside of locked doors. She kept track in spice jars. Every time she opened a new one, nutmeg, saffron, cinnamon, she marked the day mentally. She had a drawer full of silent sentinels to remind her just how long they'd been pretending. Hours later, as the harvest ball unfolded above, ballroom lights spilling over chandeliers like frozen starlight, the royal kitchens worked like a beast with 100 limbs. Servers rushed in waves, collecting gilded trays, polished goblets, hand-stitched napkins folded like lotus petals. Elira moved through it all like a shadow in silk. No one noticed her slip the smallest note beneath the garnish on a dish bound for the high table, specifically for Prince Kael's setting. It was folded so tightly it looked like a twisted stem of time, invisible to anyone not looking for it. Just 4 words in her own sharp script: South Alcove, 20 minutes. Urgent. She almost didn't send it, but she'd overheard enough between whispered threats and careless noble talk to know something was going to happen tonight. Something violent, and she would not let him die. The south alcove was cold. Outside the kitchens and deep within a servant hallway framed by old stone and dripping ivy, it had once been a monk's reading room. Now it was empty, except for the soft shuffle of boots and the breath she'd know anywhere. Kael arrived as she turned the corner, the priest already shedding the ceremonial stiffness of his prince's posture. He wore a deep navy jacket embroidered with sunbursts, his shoulder braids undone, his golden cuffs slightly askew. "Are you hurt?" he asked instantly, scanning her face like he could see beneath her skin. "No, but you might be." He stiffened. "What did you hear?" Elira didn't waste time. The dessert change was a cover. The kitchen runners were instructed to leave the dining corridor unguarded at 9:35. The guards in the East Wing were pulled to another station for protocol reasons. "It's been engineered." Kael's jaw clenched. "How sure are you? Sure enough to risk this conversation?" He took a step forward, then another. "You shouldn't be involved in this. If something happens to you..." "If something happens to you," she cut in, "everything we did, every lie, every silence, will have meant nothing." They stared at each other in the hush, surrounded by stone and ghosts. "I can't go back into that hall," he said quietly, not knowing what's coming. "You have to." She handed him a tiny jar from her apron pocket. "Smoke powder, toss it if you need an exit. I'll have the back corridor clear. Tom and Jory are ready, though they don't know why." His hands closed over the jar, brushing hers. They stood that way for a moment too long. "I miss you," he said, voice rough. She didn't let herself answer. Not with words. Just a breath, a glance, and finally, "Go." At 9:35, it happened. The chandelier dimmed for a flicker of a second, enough to hide the shimmer of a blade drawn in the shadows behind the thrown dais. A noble screamed. Kael moved before anyone else did, so did Elira. The attacker never got within a yard. The smoke powder burst into the air in a silent explosion of glittering fog, and Kael vanished into it. When the guards finally rushed in, they found only chaos and a dagger sunk into the red velvet of the throne's base. Elira watched it unfold from the service corridor, breathing hard behind a panel she had loosened herself days ago. It wasn't heroism. It was instinct. It was love, buried so deep, the only way it could live was in silence. Later that night, as nobles gossiped and speculated and guards chased phantoms, Kael found her alone in the palace garden's kitchen annex. The lanterns had burned low. Her apron was stained. Her sleeves were damp with wine. "Wasn't your shift over 2 hours ago?" he asked. "I stayed, just in case you needed seconds." He stepped into the flickering light. Elira. She looked up, and for a long, rare moment, no lies, no masks, they saw each other. Not a prince, not a chef, just a husband and a wife on the edge of a secret war. Chapter 2. A Knife in the Dark. The air still held the weight of the smoke, soft as mist but biting at the edges of breath. The fine powder hung in the ballroom's high ceilings, weaving through the scent of wine, roses, and fear. Gilded masks lay forgotten, champagne flutes abandoned on marble. Nobles whispered in clusters, their jewels trembling with each hurried movement. And somewhere beyond the scent of danger and the hush of gossip, Elira ran. Her feet flew over polished stone, skirts bunched in one hand, the other gripping a small curved blade. Not royal steel, but a kitchen boning knife. It wasn't meant for defense, it was meant to trim fat from meat, but it was hers. She knew these corridors like she knew her own pulse. Every passageway, every stair that creaked, every hidden door that servants never used, but she did. Tonight, it had saved his life, but she was exposed now. Someone had seen her. Not clearly, not enough to call her out in the middle of a royal ball, but enough to raise questions, and questions were dangerous, especially when they pointed toward the palace's quiet, competent chef with no reason to be near the throne dais, especially when they got too close to the truth. She ducked into the north pantry, chest heaving, the stone floor still warm from the ovens hours earlier. Cold storage lined the far wall, barrels of pickled roots and dark wine stacked in the corners. She pressed her back to the shelves. Elira. She whirled, blade up. Kael stood in the doorway, out of breath but steady. His ceremonial jacket was half unfastened and his crown had been hastily removed. There was a red smear near his jaw, not blood, but Elira's wine reduction. His eyes found the knife in her hand first, then her face. "You were there," he said, stepping in and closing the pantry door behind him. "You knew this would happen." "I didn't know how," she whispered, not lowering the knife. "Just that it would. And if I hadn't been, you saved my life." Silence stretched between them. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hall. A guard passed, close enough to hear if either of them breathed too loudly. He moved toward her slowly, like approaching a wounded creature. "Elira, you shouldn't have." "Don't," she said, voice low and sharp. "Don't you dare tell me what I should have done when you were the one in the line of fire. You could have been recognized." "I was almost killed." They stared at each other in the hush of pickled vegetables and polished copper. Then, like a string pulled too tight finally snapping, Kael stepped forward and took the blade from her hand. He didn't toss it away. He held it with a kind of reverence, like it was part of her. "You can't keep doing this," she whispered. "Doing what?" "Living like none of this is real." Her voice cracked. "Like I'm just a ghost in your palace. Like we're not." He set the knife down gently on a shelf. Then he kissed her. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was angry, desperate, full of a year of things neither of them had said out loud. His hands were cold from the night air, hers trembling from adrenaline, but they clung to each other like the world might break around them, and maybe it would. He broke the kiss first, rested his forehead against hers. "We need to be careful. You almost died tonight. I won't again. I swear it." "How can you promise that? Because next time you won't." 1 year earlier. The kitchens had been smaller then. The staff leaner, the palace quieter. Elira had just turned 23 and had earned her title as head chef a mere month before the king summoned her to the royal gardens. She had expected a scolding. What she got was worse, a proposal. Not from the king, from Prince Kael. "I need to marry," he had said, his voice almost bitter, "and I need someone no one will expect, someone with no political leverage, no alliances, no ambition." She had stared at him like he was mad. "I'm not a pawn," she'd said. "No, that's exactly why I asked you." It hadn't been a romance, it had been strategy. Kael was under pressure to wed quickly. His father had made that clear, and the noble families circling him all saw queenships and power. Kael saw threats. He offered Elira something most people never got: protection. Safety from being used, from being bartered, a shield carved in the shape of a marriage, and in return, she gave him her name. They'd been wed in a hidden chapel by a minor cleric under false titles. No witnesses. No rings. I won't touch you, Kael had promised. Not unless you ever want me to. At first, it was cold, distant, but slowly, in late-night conversations over roasted chestnuts, in shared books left in the corner of her kitchen, in glances across gilded halls, something shifted. They laughed. Then they listened. Then they felt. And now, a year later, standing in a pantry with blood on the marble and war in the air, Elira wasn't just a secret anymore. She was his secret, and that made her dangerous. Kael took her hand. "We'll clean this up," he said. "No one saw your face clearly, and if they did, they'd never believe a chef could be where you were. They'll suspect. Let them. I'm tired of hiding," she whispered, "of ducking through tunnels, of pretending I'm no one while you sit on a throne and pretend I'm nothing." He pulled her hand to his chest over his heartbeat. "You're everything," he said. "I need more than that, Kael. I know." They left the pantry separately. Elira returned to her kitchens. Kael returned to the nobles, to the whispers and questions and theater. But in the silence between breaths, in the corners of a palace built on secrets, something had changed. Not just a near assassination, not just a secret marriage, but a promise. Sooner or later, someone was going to find out the truth, and when they did, everything would burn. Chapter 3. Tasting Poison. The kingdom of Velrosia stirred like a pot left to boil. Rumors simmered just beneath the surface. Whispers of border tensions with the Elvonian Empire, nobles hoarding grain in preparation. Caravans stopped and searched at midnight. In the court, no one spoke of war directly. But war had a scent, and it was in the air. Elira smelled it before the rest. Not in spices or stews, but in the hush that followed a chamberlain's footsteps. In the way the royal guards flinched when doors opened too fast. And worst of all, in the sudden silence that followed when Lady Marcella of House de Vorane arrived at court. The first time Elira laid eyes on her, it was through the serving arch between the ballroom and the south corridor. Marcella walked with a glide, not a step, her gown the color of dried blood, her gaze cool, her smile untouched by sincerity. She had the beauty of a porcelain dagger. Perfect, hollow, sharp. "Who is she?" Elira had asked one of the junior bakers, that feigning disinterest. The girl whispered the name like a curse. The next queen, probably. The assignment came the following morning, sealed in gold wax. To Chef Elira Varn, you are hereby assigned to head the planning and execution of the royal engagement feast in honor of His Highness Prince Kael and Lady Marcella de Varun. Elira read it 3 times. Each word was a needle. Not once did they ask. Not once did they hesitate. She was to cook the feast celebrating the public engagement of her own husband to another woman. The kitchen staff was abuzz. Everyone wanted to impress the future queen. No one knew that the future queen was already standing in the pantry, spooning honey into boiling orange blossom syrup while trying not to cry. "Elira," Tom said gently when the rest of the staff had gone, "you don't have to do this. We can request the chamberlain to reassign." "No." Her voice was calm, flat as a cutting board. "I'll do it. But if I don't, someone else will. And she doesn't get my name and my work. I'll give them a feast she'll never forget, but not because I want her to like it." She set down the spoon and walked away before he could say more. 3 days later, Kael came to her. Not in the dark corridors, not through hidden doors. He walked straight into the main kitchen as the sun was rising, sleeves rolled up, and paused only long enough to nod at Tom, who gawked and quickly disappeared. "Elira," he said, eyes soft and tired. "I didn't know until it was already moving." "You always say that." "I mean it. This engagement, it's a political alliance. My father arranged it behind my back. With war looming, House de Vorane's support could stop half the council from defecting to the Empire. And I suppose marrying me wouldn't have done that," she said bitterly. "I forgot. I'm not useful enough to broker peace." He stepped closer. "You're everything to me." "Then why am I planning your second engagement?" Kael flinched like she'd slapped him. "This isn't what I want." but it's what you'll do." His silence was answer enough. Elira looked at him, really looked at him. His jaw was tense, dark circles under his eyes, hands marked by the ink of too many treaties. But none of that mattered when his heart wouldn't fight for her where it counted. "Do you know what it's like," she said, "to taste every dish, every glaze, every sauce, just to make sure it's perfect, so your new bride-to-be doesn't spit it out? Do you know what it feels like to pour myself into a celebration that guts me?" "Elira, no," she snapped. "Not this time. I won't wait in the shadows for you to throw me a look across the room. I won't be your secret, Kael. If you're marrying her, then do it. But I won't stand here and pretend I'm fine." Kael stepped forward, but she backed away, not from fear, but from heartbreak. "Do you think I don't want to scream this secret to the world?" he said. "That I don't lie awake at night wondering what it would be like to hold your hand in public? You're the prince. If you wanted that, it would happen." She laughed, bitter and hollow. "Don't pretend you're powerless. I've seen you burn kingdoms for less." A pause, silence. Then softer. "You're not just my secret, Kael. I'm yours. And you're ashamed of me." His face crumpled, but she was already walking away. That night, she sat alone in the royal kitchens, fingers stained from peeling purple carrots, eyes raw. The feast was only 4 days away. The menu was flawless: pomegranate glazed duck, gold-leafed pastries filled with saffron cream, a spiced mead chilled with crushed roses, a centerpiece of candied pears carved into the shape of twin swans. All of it beautiful, all of it fake. She tasted the duck juice again, just to be sure. Her hands paused. Something was off. She tasted again, this time slower, thicker, metallic, not enough to kill, but enough to make someone very, very ill. She narrowed her eyes, stared at the sauce pot. She hadn't added anything. No one had. She'd been alone in the kitchen. Or had she? Later that night, when the palace slept and the frost climbed the windows, Elira crept into Kael's chambers. He was already awake, pacing. "They're trying to poison her," she said. "Or you. I don't know which." His face went pale. "The engagement feast?" he asked. "Yes? And you tasted it?" "I taste everything." Kael reached for her, cupping her face. "You could have died." She pulled away. "Don't act like you get to mourn me when you're marrying someone else." "Elira, I'll finish the feast," she said, "but after that, I'm done hiding." And she left him there, alone, angry, afraid. And for the first time, Kael truly realized he wasn't just losing a secret. He was losing the only person who had ever chosen him, not for his crown, but in spite of it. Chapter 4: Heat in the Marble. The palace kitchens had always been her kingdom, even before the secret wedding. Even before the nights when Kael snuck in just to sit on a flour sack while she rolled dough, listening to her curse at burnt sugar like it was a personal enemy. Elira had ruled these marble halls with her hands, her eyes, her instinct. Not by blood or name, but by knowing every corner of the place, the way the ovens breathed, how the stone held heat into winter, how certain spice jars creaked when opened. Tonight, though, the warmth was a lie. The feast was only 2 nights away, and yet the kitchen hummed too quiet, too stiff. Elira stood at the chopping block, watching her staff filter out one by one under the guise of rest and early prep. But she'd seen the signs, the nervous glances, the way Tom had moved the sauce ladle away from the duck stock and replaced it with one he washed himself. No one talked about the near poisoning, but they all knew. Elira picked up a wooden spoon and tapped the marble twice. Tom turned back. "We need to talk." Then, it was Kael who first stole a moment, not as a prince, not with the weight of the crown, just a boy too tired to keep pretending. She had been slicing plums in the west kitchen, preparing dessert for a visiting envoy. The moon had been silver through the tall windows, and she hadn't heard him enter. "You know," he said, "you chop like you're mad at the fruit." She startled, knife clattering. "You can't just sneak into kitchens. You're royal." "I'm hungry. For dessert? For quiet." She stared. He didn't flinch. And then, because it was safer than silence, she handed him a slice. "It's soaked in rum. Perfect." He sat on a crate, ate in silence, and returned the next night. And the next. Now, Tom wrung his hands. "You can't just accuse nobility, Elira, especially not Marcella's family. I'm not accusing anyone." Her voice was low, controlled. "I'm asking what you heard, what you saw." "I saw nothing. But you know something." He swallowed. Fine. One of the newer boys, Jasric, he said he saw a courier slip something to one of the pantry girls the morning before the sauce went strange. Who? He doesn't know, but it wasn't anyone on the kitchen list. No official mark on their clothing. Just black gloves. Black gloves. A noble's detail. Someone rich enough to hide even while they paid others to get dirty. And the pantry girl? Gone. Transferred. Chamberlain Rowan signed the order. Same day the sauce changed. Elira's stomach sank. Rowan works for the royal house, but he favors Marcella's uncle on the council. Exactly. Then, Kael had brought her a bundle of lavender once, his cloak soaked from rain, his hands red with cold. You're going to get caught, she'd whispered, drying the stems with a towel. Then I'll just marry you publicly and start a war. You think that's funny? No, he'd said. I think it's worth it. She hadn't let herself believe it then, but when he touched her, careful and reverent, she'd leaned into it anyway. Later, he'd fall asleep beside the stove, and she'd memorize the way his chest rose when he dreamed. Now, she went to him in his council chamber, not in secret, not hidden. He blinked when she entered, startled to see her in the light of day. Elira, don't, she said. Listen. She closed the door, locked it, stepped close, eyes steady. There's something rotten beneath this feast. I traced the tainted sauce. It wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Someone used the kitchens. Used us. His face shifted, not surprised, but troubled, like he'd suspected and feared being right. And you think I traced the courier to Marcella's family, or at least someone aligned with them. Her uncle, maybe Rowan, maybe her. He was quiet. Too quiet. Kael, she pressed, voice softening. Say something. I can't accuse a noble house, he said finally, on the word of a chef. She flinched. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Elira, this is political. If I move against House de Vorane, even whisper suspicion, they'll spin it as sabotage. It'll make her a martyr. The council will turn. The kingdom could fall into civil war. So you'll do nothing? I'll look into it discreetly. I already did. His hands clenched into fists. You don't understand what's at stake. And you don't understand what it costs me to keep loving you when you won't choose me. They stared at each other, two hearts breaking in perfect silence. Kael looked away first. Not because he didn't love her, but because love wasn't the crown. That night, Elira walked the halls alone. She didn't cry, she didn't shout, but something inside her shifted, hardened. The palace might not see her. The council might never know her name, but she would not be erased. She wasn't just a chef, she was the prince's secret wife, and no matter how hot the marble burned beneath her feet, she would not let this kingdom swallow her whole, not without a fight. And that was just the beginning. Elira had uncovered the first of many dangerous truths, and though she and Kael were closer than ever, the shadows of betrayal were far from gone. The knives of politics were still sharp, and with every step they took toward justice, the stakes grew higher. The world around them was on the brink of change, yet the danger was far from over. What will happen when Elira becomes the target once more? Will Kael fight for her? Or will the weight of the crown prove too heavy? Find out in the next chapter, part 2 of the story, coming soon. So be sure to subscribe, follow, or check back for the next twist in this tale of love, power, and betrayal.